Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We're excited you're here. We're going to have a great discussion today on the biggest client communication mistakes that law firms make. This is going to be, I think, an interesting topic and a good discussion. I've been on a lot of webinars, by the way, that are like 60 to 90 minutes long, and we're going to try to keep this one shorter than that. This will hopefully be around 30, 35 minutes. I've found that shorter webinars generally are better at providing good information. So my name is McKay. I'm on the marketing team at Kenect. We're also joined in just a moment by Nalini Prasad at BluShark Digital, who has spoken all over the country and on webinars in the legal space for a long time. They're one of the leading marketing agencies for law firms in the world. We'll let Nalini introduce herself in just a moment. So what we'll do is we're going to take probably 4 or 5 minutes, just briefly introduce you to Kenect, who we are, what we do, and then we'll dive into the topic and have a discussion. The only other thing I'd mention before we start, everybody, is please ask questions. We really want this to be interactive. So if you would, go to the little question drop down on your screen right there on your GoToWebinar panel, and maybe just type in like where you're dialing in from, city and state, where you're dialing in from today. That's going to help us get to know who's on the call, and it's going to help you get to know how to use that little question area if you have questions, comments, heckles, smart remarks, whatever you'd like. Awesome. So thanks for doing that, everybody. Keep going there. Just type in where you're dialing in from today. All right, let's dive in. So first of all, who is Kenect? We are a text messaging platform for law firms. We're based outside of Salt Lake City. And essentially what we do is we turn your main law firm phone number into a textable line. So you keep your same phone number. It continues to make and receive phone calls. All we allow you to do is with that same number is to send and receive text messages as well. I've heard horror stories from every attorney that I've ever talked to about giving out your personal cell number. Well, now you have the benefit of texting, but you don't have to give out your personal cell number. This allows you to communicate more efficiently. We put a text us button on your website so you can generate new leads. We allow you to conduct live video consultations through Kenect, which has become a huge benefit for firms who want to include that in their initial consultation process, and then drive online reviews as well. You can see the different CMS platforms that we integrate with. This is really, really helpful with intake. So if someone texts in, those text messages and the contact go directly into the CMS that you're using. And if someone's already in the CMS, the information for that person goes into the texting platform as well. So how do we do it? Two-way text messaging for your law firm, so you don't need to give out your personal cell number. Web leads straight from your website, as we said, video chat for virtual consultations, and then online review generation. Your clients, I would say, prefer text messaging. So I would bet half of you are texting somebody right now. It's just how we communicate. 89% of people say they would rather communicate with a business via text messaging than a phone call. 98% of all text messages are opened. Most of your clients say phone calls are disruptive. Just get rid of that phone tag element. The only other two things I'll mention before we dive in here is just how you send text messages. You can log into the Kenect platform. It looks and functions a lot like an email inbox, and you send and receive text messages from this part of the platform. There's also a newly updated mobile app that allows you to send and receive text messages directly from your cell phone, and also do things like do a video chat, schedule messages, request online payment, do cameras, attach photos, videos, etc. And then I mentioned live video chat as well, which you can instantly create while you're texting. You just click on the little video icon, invite to video chat here, send you both a link. You click on the link and you can do a live video chat. That's really helpful during the initial consultation and intake process. So with that, why don't we get started, Nalini? Thanks for jumping on. Nalini is awesome at jumping on these webinars with us and making it more of a discussion. So why don't you take a second here, Nalini, and just introduce yourself and introduce BluShark Digital before we dive in.
Yes, thank you, McKay, as always, for having me. My name is Nalini, as McKay has mentioned. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer, fun title, at BluShark Digital. But what that means is that I've been here since before we were named, when we were just the in-house marketing team for a law firm in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. Seth Price is the managing partner of that firm, who helped scale his firm from 2 to 40 lawyers in about 10 years before saying, well, shit, if this, is something I'm onto here with digital marketing that could scale my firm, I could probably help a bunch of other firms across the country. And so he took his 10-person in-house team, 5+ years ago and turned us into BluShark. I've kind of helped come up with the strategies and keeping up with Google and all that fun stuff. But along the way, as you mentioned, McKay, I have spoken across the country, spoke at 30 legal conferences in one calendar year, and that allowed me to really speak with a lot of firms across the country of all sizes and shapes, and not just, kind of talk about digital and how to scale your firm, but lots of different operational items such as intake and communication with clients and lead generation and conversion, as well as hiring, right? So I really enjoy every aspect of growing a firm, and I'm really excited to kind of get into the communication aspect today.
Yeah, this will be fun. I'm excited for this discussion. So let me give you just a little bit of background on this topic. So where did we get the information about these mistakes? Like, what are we basing these mistakes off of? So there's 3 or 4 sources here. First, we have several thousand law firms that use Kenect, and we are able to analyze trends in terms of the text messages they send, in terms of the text messages they receive, in terms of their time it takes them to reply, all that kind of stuff we're able to gather as data, and it's really interesting. The second piece is talking to experts like Nalini and others in the industry who work with so many law firms that they have a good idea of some of these mistakes they see over and over again. The third are talking to law firms directly. And then the fourth are diving into third-party research. So like Clio's done a ton of work on this, for example, and has published some really interesting information. So with that, let's dive right in here and talk about the 4 biggest client communication mistakes law firms make. So first and foremost is not being proactive enough. Here's what I mean by this, and the way we'll structure this is I'll briefly comment on it and tee it up, and then Nalini can dive in and add her 2 cents to each one. So mistake number 1 is not being proactive enough. Your client, and here's what we mean by this, your client should never have to reach out to you to get an update on a case, on a hearing date, on whether or not they need to provide you with more information or evidence or paperwork. They should never be the ones having to track you down and try to communicate with you. You should always be the one who's so proactive that your client would never in a million years have to play phone tag to reach you. You should be so proactive that you're the one reaching out to them to make sure that they know what is going on constantly. The number 1 source of negative reviews that we see with law firms is when they feel like they were not communicated with, when clients feel like the firm didn't communicate with them well enough or consistently enough. That's the number 1 reason firms get negative Google reviews, is because they didn't feel like the firm's proactive enough in communicating with them. So if a hearing date moves, if there's an extra fee, or if something took longer and you're going to bill them more, or you need more paperwork or more evidence or more information, you should be the one who's reaching out to them. Now, we're biased, we're a texting platform, we believe that's the best way to communicate with your clients, but regardless, you have to be proactive. Don't wait for your clients to contact you. Always be over communicating with them. Nalini, I'm curious for your thoughts on this, if you believe this is a big problem, if this is a mistake that a lot of firms make.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's really important to know that we can sit here and say, well, here's the issue, but it's how do you solve it, right? And I say this time and time again because it is so important. The more you mean to your firm, the less your firm is worth. The biggest bottleneck in your firm sometimes with being able to address these types of communication issues is that either 1, you're a solo practitioner, and so you're the person responsible for touching each of these clients once a month, or sending out this information to them and keeping that proactive communication stream open. If you're a solo practitioner, I completely understand that you only have so many hours in a day, right? But delegation is so important, whether you have a secretary, a paralegal, or it has to be delegated to a process or a system, right? So whether that is a text system that you can get automated, where you're not having to pick up the phone and do these touches, or that's an email system that's automated, or your file bind or smart advocate case management system. It's really tapping into the resources you have so that you are not killing yourself to make sure you can be proactive. And if you do have a bigger team, it is making sure that you have these processes in place, that you have maybe someone who is assigned to each of their clients. And it may not be the lawyer, it may be a case manager or someone who can touch base and keep that communication open, making sure people are happy, but also making sure you have all of the pieces you need to litigate the case, right? Or get the best result for your person. And a lot of times, if you don't have that staff, you have to depend on something that you can delegate to. And I thought that's the biggest fix. I absolutely agree with you, McKay, that is 100% one of the biggest issues and holes in systems and firms.
Yeah, awesome. I totally agree. I think you've got to think about from a people and process standpoint how you solve it, right? Like, so just saying like, we're going to be more proactive, that's not going to solve it. You've got to make sure it's defined, like, okay, who's going to tell them if a hearing date moves? And I keep bringing some of these up because we see them a lot in the negative reviews firms get, is like, a date moved and we weren't told, or man, they said they needed paperwork the night before they needed it, and I didn't know, and I had to miss work to get them this information. And these are the kinds of things that generate negative reviews and negative impact to your clients. And that's why it's important to be super proactive. Okay, second mistake, not enough focus on convenience. Now, here's what I mean by this. So we've seen the number of changes that businesses, that your firm and every business really has had to deal with in the last year to deal with COVID. Now, in most states, as things return to some sort of normalcy, some things are going to go back to normal. Some things, frankly, won't, though. One of the things that won't, and there's been a lot of research on this from groups like McKinsey and Deloitte, and even Clio's written on this a little bit, is people have demanded, we've gotten used to a certain level of convenience dealing with businesses. This is everything from restaurants and curbside pickup and curbside grocery pickup to doing initial consultations via video conference at law firms. These are certain elements of convenience that probably were going to take place over the next 8 to 10 years, right? But COVID has now made us realize we like in 14 months. So the second mistake that I think firms are starting to make, and we're hearing this from law firms, and I'm curious if you are too, Nalini, is they're trying to grapple with, okay, what goes back to normal versus what continues to be changed, right? Do we continue to do initial consultations via video chat? Do we have an option now? Is it just going back to in person? What does that look like? What about the way leads are handled and the convenience for people to engage with their attorney however they want? Like, what goes back to normal and what stays changed? I think one of the mistakes that firms are starting to make is they're wishing it goes back to completely normal, right? They're demanding in some cases that their clients are coming in to the office to do every single meeting and want it to go back to the way it was 2 years ago. Our message is, look, you're going to have be comfortable with some permanent change here. And it's not going to go back to 100% of normal because people have demanded and become used to a certain level of convenience that we became accustomed to during COVID that we're not just going to throw away overnight. Nalini, interested on your thoughts on this one?
I think you're absolutely right with that last sentence you said, that people have changed through 2020, right? Just with the way that we do. I would say that from my experience so far, I've seen about a 65-35, hope that adds up to 100, split with basically the 65% of lawyers that I'm engaging with are saying, I really enjoy that I don't have to travel for a depot anymore, that I can actually help a client that is outside my city limits who normally would not have driven, right, to my office, but now I can reach them. I can build my business and scale my business without having to put up a bunch of brick and mortars and put out a lot of extra money. So 65% have embraced this. While they do want to have that in-person touch again, and they want to have a little bit of that normalcy in the culture of legal and the way that things run, they're okay with a back to normal being a new normal, right? Whereas 35% of folks that I speak with are absolutely, they are trying to say, hey, I just want to go back to the way it was. I want to meet everyone in my office. I want things to be very traditional. Legal was made to be legal, and this COVID thing was just a phase. And to those 35%, that's who I think really needs to hear this mistake, right? The 65% is they're moving and shaking, and they're figuring out how to be flexible. But to that 35%, I think you're absolutely correct. And I think that what needs to be made very clear is that they're missing the mark, that they're missing out on how much they can get out of more of a virtual world, out of a more convenient world. It's, being able to, like I said, the biggest thing I've seen is being able to spread your reach, to be able to help people throughout your whole state and not just limit yourself to the city that you're in right now, right? By being able to have those virtual meetings and things like that. And then one other thing that I would say on convenience here, and it kind of goes with the last thing. When we talk about reviews, mistake number one is people not proactive. And a lot of times I think people are not proactive because they're scared to ask for a review, or they just don't want to inconvenience someone and say, hey, can you do this for me, right? Feels like it's asking for a favor. One way and one tip that I always give with asking for reviews to make it easy and make it convenient for your client is the day that you are handing them a settlement check, or you're giving them that great news, you are the person at the top of their happy list, right? If you're in office, and this may not be the case in the future, but if you are in office, you send them the link to your Google My Business, right? You send it to their phone as they're sitting there in front of you. And one of the biggest things is that Google cares about the words that these clients are using to review you. It will be very easy for a client to know what star they're going to give you from 1 to 5. But a lot of times they have no idea what they would write, right? And so you're missing out on those keywords. So I always say 2 very simple leading questions. Hey, I'm going to shoot you this, the link to the Google My Business review. If you could just take a couple minutes to, just drop a couple lines about what you enjoyed working, why you enjoyed working with me, and what I helped you with. Right now, all of a sudden, they absolutely have a few sentences that they can do, and it will have the practice area, and it will have some really raving things to say about you. You say you are going to get the paperwork finished. You're going to leave the office for 5 to 10 minutes to go get things together. And what more do they have to do than to leave that review in that 5 to 10 minutes, right, when left alone? So you can do the ask. You are still providing them a service and about to give them, great news, so you don't have to feel bad about the ask, and you're making it convenient for them. You're not asking them to do it when they go home, right? So that's all. I know that was a long-winded answer, but I wanted to hit on both of those points.
That's a great. No, that's a really good point. Make every part of it convenient, whether it's the review gathering process, whether it's how you deliver, like you said, settlement information to them, whatever it is, make it convenient. Okay, mistake 3. This is the one that I will probably pound the table on a little bit because we have so much data on this. So number 3 is making them wait. Here's what I mean. So one of the things we did is, as I said, with our over 1,000 law firms that use Kenect, we analyzed, we actually do have like a legit data scientist on staff at Kenect. And one of the things that we tasked him with, and he went into his dark lair and came back with some data, was we said, hey, will you just do some data research around lead follow-up time? In other words, if someone receives a phone call or a text message, a law firm, from a lead, from a potential client, how long does it take them to reply and respond? And here's what we found. And we've done webinars on this topic exclusively, and we'll do more. Is number 1, during business hours, it takes the average firm 1 hour and 36 minutes to respond to a lead. So if a lead comes in, whether it's text, phone call, or a form fill, it takes over an hour to respond during business hours. So that's slow. Like compared to other industries, that's really slow. The second thing we found is that when off business hours, so after 6 p.m. local time, it takes an average of 8.6 hours for the lead to be responded to, which means essentially they're not getting called till the next day if you average it out and look at the data.
Yeah.
So here's this is a huge mistake, because I promise you there are firms in your local market who compete with you who are responding to leads more quickly. We see this data. There are some firms that are responding to leads during business hours in 5 minutes and are responding to leads after business hours within 30. Now, that doesn't mean they're having like a full 2-hour intake call with them, but what it does mean is they're responding to them via text message, or they're calling them back or whatever, and they're setting up an appointment for the next day. That is far preferable to not responding to them at all. So this is, I think, maybe the most dramatic mistake a firm can make, is not responding quickly enough during business hours and making someone wait 8-9 hours to respond if they happen to text in at 6:15 p.m., for example. I've got some thoughts on how to improve this, but Nalini, I'm interested for your thoughts on that data.
Yeah, 100%. At the end of the day, this is leaving money on the table. If you have spent time and resources and energy to get your branding out there, whether that is taking time away from your family to go to a golf course or grab a drink with somebody to build a referral relationship, and then they refer someone to you and that person does not get a phone answered, or whether it's you putting money into digital marketing, which is not cheap, it is not, it takes a lot of time. You finally get yourself ranking and you have that visibility that is hard to achieve. And then you have all these calls coming in and you're not converting them simply because you're not picking up the phone. McKay is mentioning how long it takes, and that's crazy to hear how long that is for a return call, because in this day and age, the impatience is real. When someone does not get an answer from number 1 on Google, they go call number 2 or number 3. It is so easily accessible to call these firms that someone is going to pick up, and that person is likely going to get the business. By the time you call back, they're not even going to be answering anymore, right? That's one of the biggest issues, is that the callback turns into a ghosting. You're not even going to reach these people in 55% of the cases, and that is 55% of cases you could have been trying, and you could have been monetizing, right? So it goes back to my first thing that I will pound the table about, is that making sure that you can delegate, and even if you're a solo, you can delegate to an answering service or a service. These services are getting so great now that, there's like Ruby and Smith AI that will do the after hours, different languages, but there's companies like ICE, Captora, and Alert that will actually be trained so that they can get the retainer signed for you too. And it costs a little bit more, but it will make sure that somebody on the phone doesn't need a call back, right? Gets that appointment set, like McKay said. So.
Yeah, those are great points. Like, we have firms ask us all the time, well, how should I actually fix this? Because I think everybody would agree that it's an issue. You said it really well, Nalini, which is, it's this, in this day and age, if people don't respond right away, it's just like, well, I'll just go to the next firm. Like, people aren't loyal in terms of, like, they don't know that you're the best attorney and have the best, case win rate and have, you know what I mean? Like, they don't know that. And so they're just
Right.
going to go to the firm. They're just going to go to the firm that responds the quickest. I'll give you an example from real life that I'm experiencing right now. So on Saturday, I was on our way to my son's lacrosse game, and we got hit. Our car got hit, and we're all okay. Everybody's fine, both groups. But I'm gonna have to buy a new pickup, which is not pleasant right now given what's going on in the supply chain world and prices and things. But anyway, so I have just been reaching out to different car dealerships saying, like, what do you have on the lot right now? Da da da. Well, guess what? I messaged 6 or 7 local dealerships yesterday. 3 or 4 didn't get back to me till this morning. And well, guess what? They're like not in my queue anymore. Like, I'm already actively engaged with salespeople from 2 firms that talked to me yesterday. So it's like, I'm not going to then go backtrack down, and waste another day talking to these other dealerships. I promise you the same thing is true of your firm. Like, they're just simply going to go to the firm next door if they're not able to speak with you immediately. So a couple ideas on how to fix this. Nalini, you mentioned a couple. There are third-party resources that you can use to help you, particularly with after hours leads. So they can handle the lead, they can at least set up an appointment the next day. The other thing that I would suggest is to actually, and this will sound like sacrilege, I think, in some cases for some firms, but I would strongly recommend, if you don't want to deal with a third party to handle these leads, especially after hours, just assign somebody on a rotating basis to respond to leads after hours.
Yeah.
Now, the benefit of this, the beauty of this is, like, we're not talking about having to do a 35-minute phone call. We're talking about, because hopefully you'll have text messaging, you can literally just respond to a text, which you can do at dinner, at a soccer game, hanging out at your house. Like, it takes 30 seconds. That's all you need to do, is respond and say, hey, I see this. This is awesome. Here's 2 or 3 questions about your case. Can I call you first thing in the morning when I get to the office? That is more than sufficient. That's all you need to do. So when I say, hey, assign an attorney to talk to these people after hours, people are like, oh my gosh, that's not going to happen. We're not talking about having to take your whole evening and do 3 intake calls. We're talking about responding to 1 or 2 text messages. It's that simple. Nalini, any other thoughts on this one before we move on?
No, I think you hit it on the head. I really liked your option too of, if you have the internal resources, it's not asking to dedicate a human, but to kind of have somebody rotate once a week, and that makes it manageable.
Right, that's the key, exactly. You're not going to have the same person do it all the time, but you can rotate it around. I love that. All right, number 4 here. This one is one I'll admit totally is like biased. We're a texting platform, so I will say upfront, like, we're biased. But I do think people want to the first part is not an opinion. The second part is an opinion. People want to communicate with texting today. That's just the way it is. That's the way it works. That's how we communicate in today's day and age, for better or worse, by the way. I think there's problems with texting as well, but it's the way people communicate. It just is. None of these dealerships, going back to my looking for a new truck example, I never called one of them. They all had texting on their website. I reached out, I've been texting them. It's just the way we communicate. You can text during a meeting, you can text when you're at your house, when you're eating dinner, you can text when your spouse is in the room in a family law situation. Like, there's 37 legal examples where texting's better. I believe one of the biggest mistakes firms are making is when they say, my clients aren't going to text. We're estate attorneys, our clients won't text. Just make sure you're at least using or considering new communication methods. Nalini, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say I know that there's lots of statistics and data out there on this, but even from the website perspective, looking at the number of phone calls you get versus the number of contact forms and live chat requests that you get. What we're seeing 100% is that the call volume is staying steady and or declining, and in most cases it's staying steady, right? That there's this certain audience of folks who will pick up the phone and get shit done that way, but we are seeing is that the contact forms and the live chat features on websites are increasing for sure over the last couple of years. Last year was through the roof, just with people, doing most of their business online and virtually because of COVID. But there's definitely hard facts that show that most people are choosing to get involved with that first touch, at least. I know, especially for the first touch, to vet a person based on their contact form response rate or a live chat conversation where they don't have to be on the phone. And then they're happy to get on the phone after, right? So we're not telling you the phone is going dead, but in order to get those quick communications, just think about it from your own perspective of how you function in life. If you were to get an email right now, you'd likely have to click into your email inbox and you'd have all this spam to go through. And a lot of people just literally click select all, mark as read, right? There's just so much overwhelming spam in your inbox. But when you do get a text, you get a little bubble on your phone, you're going to go check it. You most times think it's a friend. And if it is someone who is a business that is reminding you of something, you're usually appreciative of it, like, oh, that was a great, easy way to let me know this is happening and I'm happy about it. It is just that much easier to get through to you in a very quick time period.
Yeah, that's a great point. To be very clear, we're not suggesting that you switch to this or something. Like you can still have
Yeah,
all the forms on your website you want. You can still have your phone number displayed that they can call. All we're saying is make that phone number also textable and make it really
yeah,
easy for them to text you, right? So just I think a
yep.
mistake is not at least providing the option, I think is maybe the best way to say it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that it's like you said, you hit it on the head. Like the option's going to be almost one of the only options in the future when we're talking 5 years from now, and that's how people are truly communicating, right? So I agree also with where you said with, estate planning. People say I have a different demographic, so they're not going to do it that way, but you'd be surprised. I agree.
You know what's
Everybody.
funny? I was just talking about this yesterday with a colleague at work. So my parents are in their 60s, and we hear sometimes, usually most firms get it. Like they're like, oh, well, yeah, of course people want to text, and it's kind of obvious. But we do have sometimes estate firms and things like that maybe have a slightly older client base say, my clients
Mhm.
aren't going to use it. The thing that's funny, so I'm on a family text thread with all my siblings, each of our spouses, and my parents, right? Where we can talk,
Yeah,
share pictures of our kids and all that kind of stuff, right? And make fun of my brothers and
yeah,
all that. So, guess who's the number one texter in that thread? It's my mom, who's 63 by like a
yeah.
mile. Like, she's texting in that thing like 25 times a day to the point I have to mute it so I don't get a beep
Yeah.
every ding every 2 seconds. So my point is, don't just assume because your clients are in their 60s or 70s that they're not texting. They probably are texting more than anybody. So anyway,
It's
so
true.
yeah. So anyway, all
Yeah.
right, Nalini. Why don't you tell everybody how they can reach out to you and contact you? I should have put that on this last slide. I didn't. But tell
Yeah,
everybody how they can reach out.
I just put that in the chat as well, but I just put my cell phone number. I'm a texter, so I actually enjoy speaking to a lot of our clients that way, or folks who just have questions about digital or anything. And my email is there as well, which will get responded to, but I will usually be much quicker when you text or call. So I put that information out there in the chat.
Awesome, Nalini. Thank you, and thanks to you guys at BluShark. You're such great partners, and you do such a great job in the industry. Whenever we talk to a firm who uses BluShark or is familiar with BluShark, they're always super complimentary. So good job to you and your team. Um, and then on the Kenect side, you can text us or call us at that number. It's the same number for texting or calling, and you can see how it works. So if you text that number, we're going to send you an immediate auto reply that says something like someone will be with you within a couple minutes, and our team will reach out. Their standard is about 3 minutes. So if you haven't got a reply in 3 minutes, just call in and yell at somebody, tell them I told you to. No, but we're really quick at responding. So thanks again for jumping in, everybody. I hope this was useful. I think as we emerge from COVID into some sense of normalcy, I think customer communication and client communication will be more important than ever. So hopefully this was helpful. We'll send out the recording after as well. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great Thursday and a great rest of the week.
Absolutely. And thank you, McKay, for having me again. Always appreciate it.
Thanks, Nalini.